So I kind of want to go through the basics again. For people who just got started, not sure what to do, they've installed Kali Linux. Now it begs the question, okay, what do I do now? So just to kind of recap, I'm sure you've seen a lot of YouTube videos. I'm sure you've seen a lot of YouTube tutorials on Kali Linux, or maybe just Linux itself. I want to kind of go through the basics again to kind of guide people into this Linux distribution a little bit better. Kind of what is it all about? This is just a beginner video, so I mean, if you already know this stuff, there's no point in watching it. But Kali Linux, let me just go through, just dive straight into it. Kali Linux is a operating system used by ethical hackers. This operating system is it's widely known for ethical hacking purposes related to security researching, discovering vulnerabilities on web applications because of the tools that you would use in this distribution. There's a lot of tools and suites which are pre-installed, which you can use to practice your skills and actually to be a hacker. I'm sure you installed Kali Linux not to just play around and play video games. You installed Kali Linux for the intent to hack. Responsibly, of course. I do not condone any illegal activity, and I sure as don't promote any illegal activity or any illegal endeavor. I am what you call a ethical hacker, someone who finds a vulnerability and loves the opportunity to report it and actually to do good because it makes the world a better place. And I would like to kind of go through the basics to kind of guide people into the direction of Kali Linux itself, because it has 600 tools. And if I try to show 600 tools, we might be here for 2 weeks or even a month, to be, honest. It's just going to take a long time to show you 600 tools. I don't think that's really needed. 600 tools is not really necessary for, your endeavor. You probably thought, do I need to learn 600 tools, Declan? No, you don't. You don't need to learn 600. You probably need to learn about the basics, probably around about 5 at least. So we're going to just kind of go through the basics first. So when you install Kali Linux, this is the first thing that you see. You've got this drop-down menu here. This menu is just for categories associated with the particular field you're interested in. And then in this category has the tools to do that particular thing. So for example, Reconnaissance is all about, information gathering. This is what you call recon, or like it says there, reconnaissance, information gathering. And it just has a lot of open source intelligence tools. It allows you to discover, find, research information. That's all this is. So, you got the popular one down here called Nmap. And if you actually click on it, it just opens it in the terminal. Because most of these tools are terminal tools. If you don't know what a terminal is, this terminal window here, this little window, if you actually click this icon here, this is a terminal. It's just like a window emulator. It's just a window which you can type other commands in to do something specific. So if I type in ls, you can see here, it's listed my files on a computer. So if I change the directory by typing cd, which stands for change directory, into the desktop directory, where do you think that goes? It goes into the background. So you see, this is my desktop environment behind me. And if I create a folder, so let's say make directory, like this, make directory, make dir, and let's just say test. We do that, we can see this folder just popped up on my screen, and I can drag it around. It's an actual folder if I click on it. So you can see how the terminal emulator can be very handy when you want to navigate through files and when you want to navigate through remote connections and servers and stuff like that. So, you would use the terminal most of the time to configure, pre-install, or even update tools or software that you would use in penetration testing. The very first thing that you should do when you install Kali Linux is typing sudo apt update, and then type a put and. So this is what you call the and operator, which basically means, okay, run this command first and then run the second one. So you can go sudo apt upgrade as well. So apt, if you don't know what this is, it's like a package manager. So a package manager is where you can install packages, software, and even update it on your current system without needing to do a lot of stuff. So you just type in sudo apt update, which is going to fetch the latest packages related to Kali Linux, which can update current software and tools that you would use, like Burp Suite or Nmap or whatever it is, right? Or even Python. Upgrade, however, updates and upgrades the entire operating system itself, updating the core packages which makes the operating system work in Kali Linux. This works for any other Linux distribution as well. It actually upgrades the firmware, and it's pretty nice. So you can see there, it just fetched those packages and it's configured it, and it just bundles it, and it's asking me if I want to continue to install these other kernel packages. I'm going to go ahead and do that. It might take a little while depending on your internet connection, but it's definitely a necessity if you want a fast, working, reliable Kali Linux environment when you do penetration testing or even hack the box like I always talk about in my videos. So anyways, you can see this folder, I just dragged it in the bin. It's going to say empty trash. I don't need that trash because it is literally trash. I'm going to minimize my terminal. Don't close it, just minimize it. So in the background, it's updating. Go to the applications menu again. So let's have a look here. So we got Reconnaissance. We just took a look at that. We got Burp Suite, which is a popular tool for intercepting website requests and applications, which helps you analyze certain requests. It's a lot of information to handle, but you'll get through it very easily. So everything to do with this category is just researching and finding stuff. Resource development is just everything to do with like searching for the right exploit. And honestly, I don't know what this other stuff is. I haven't messed with it. The only common ones I know is Searchploit, where you search for a particular exploit that you would use or run against a vulnerability. MSF Venom to generate a payload or even encode payloads, which is something that you get access to. So this is a category relied strictly on, gaining access and having that initial access. So these are like initial access tools. It's not like you click it and then you gain access to something. So you can actually run this tool against something. So for example, this tool here called Comics is used for testing command injection vulnerabilities in a website. Parameter, just like SQL map. SQL map is used for SQL injections. This one here, Comics, is used for command injection. So it's very nice. So you do have to do a lot of research in like web application security and use Kali Linux as well to learn about it. That's how I did. And I'll definitely make a tutorial series. Execution tab, everything to gain access again. Persistence is like everything to do with being persistent, having that persistent access. These are just tools to gain access to a web server. Not sure what this top one is. Privilege escalation. Oh, this is probably the best thing to learn more about. Privilege escalation is basically where you have access to a system already, but you don't have like higher authority on the system. So for example, if you for educational purposes, as an example, if you got into a vulnerable Windows server operating system, if you basically hacked into a Windows computer and you are the basic user, you're not like the admin user, you can actually run WinPs. So you've got LinPs and WinPs. WinPs is for Windows, LinPs is for Linux. So let's say you hacked into a Windows computer and you wanted to find loopholes or find vulnerable versions in the system. WinPs will automate this for you to find those things so you can do your research and quickly gain access. The same as for Linux. If you hacked into a Linux server or something like that, it's the same thing. You can run LinPs to find those loopholes and get higher privileges on the system, like root, right? Which is pretty cool. Defensive evasion, credential access, discovery. These are actually new tabs that have been opened, but most of it you'll still see the same tools. It's pretty nice. So these are a lot of tools to go through. I did say 600, but you could just take a look at these main ones in the category, but they do have it listed as well, if you installed it, of course. But this is actually a pre-made virtual machine, so I don't actually think it has 600 tools built into it. I think it has the basic necessities for you to do penetration testing. And of course, you can install any other tool later on down the line. All right, let's go back to our terminal. Let's see if it's updating. Okay, it's at 14%. So I'm going to go ahead and skip the video. So let's continue where we left off. So it's done upgrading. That's brilliant. And if you have done this already, just skip that. Let's get into the basics. So type in clear, so you can actually clear your terminal. The shortest way and the quickest way to do it without typing clear is actually by holding, if you're on Windows, Control L. If you hold Control L, that clears the terminal as well. I think if you're doing it on VMware Fusion, so this is on Mac, I think it's Command L. So you could try and do that. But yeah, so clear also does the same thing. So if you have a bunch of stuff on the screen, you can just type in clear and it clears the screen. So you can just do Control L if you're on Windows, anyways, let's get straight into it. So the first thing that we just did in the beginning was change directory onto our desktop, make a folder. I'll show you that again. So if you type in cd dot dot, that goes back a folder. So it goes back a directory. So this itself is an environment. You can also navigate into folders as well. If I type in ls, it means list the files. So that's what we are doing here. We are listing the files on the system. And we can see here, we're listing files. We can see desktop downloads, pictures, etc. If we downloaded something, we can go into the downloads folder by typing cd downloads. And if we type in ls, there's nothing in this file. To actually see hidden files, if you want to find hidden files, you can type in ls-a. So what this will do is it will find hidden directories. And if you don't know what hidden directories are, so let me go ahead and create hidden directory, just a hidden directory called hidden, or I'll just do test. Okay, that's a hidden directory with the dot in the beginning. That's how you create a folder that isn't supposed to be seen. If I do ls, you can see it's not showing up. If I do ls-a, you can see there the folder showed up and I can get into it. So it's pretty nice. So in order to remove a directory, we're going to type remove and then the name of the folder. And by that, it's going to say can't remove is a directory. So we could just say, you know what? Let's do sudo remove test. Okay, it's still going to say that. Let's say remove fully. So this -rf means remove fully dot test. And we can see there it just removed it. And if I find it, it's not there. So you can see how helpful it is to rely on the terminal emulator to navigate through the system, create files, move files, delete files, even run commands, tools, etc. So you can actually have more than one terminal window open doing certain things. So it's pretty cool. So you can do cd.r. So let's go back a directory. You can see this is the home directory where the users are. If I go all the way back, you can see this is where all the system files are, the bootloader, the kernel, all the packages installed, etc. So it's everything's in here as well, yeah? But just type in cd to go back to the main directory of our, at this start. And so let's just take it slow. So ls, that lists the files, mkdir with a file name, or sorry, a folder name, stands for make directory. So this is going to make a directory, and you can name it whatever you want, literally. You can name it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. So it's just a folder, right? You can create a folder to do certain things. So you can say, oh, okay, I want to work on my website. Let's just create a folder to put my code in, or something like that, you know? So you can make a directory by using the mkdir command. You can also remove a directory by typing remove and then the file name or the folder name to remove it. And if that doesn't work, you can use remove fully, completely remove it, and with sudo it will remove. The next thing is, so like I showed you before, to see hidden files is ls-a. And you can actually see right away, it did list other directories, but it also lists the files that are hidden. So if I do ls, this is the same directory. If I type in ls-a, you can see all these other files and folders that pop up, which is very nice. And these aren't supposed to be changed. This is by default installed already, but you can actually tweak it and interact with it. So when you install tools, it configures with your bash environment, which is very nice. But anyways, that's awesome, right? So let's get back into it. So if we go to the menu here, we took a look at some tools, right? But we didn't actually run any of them. So let's go ahead, just play around. So if we type in Nmap, okay, what happened? It didn't do anything. So Nmap is just a tool which allows you to scan like open services and ports on a network. But you can see here, nothing obviously happened, but it's because we need to supply a address to scan. So if we type in Nmap and then a IP, this can be a local area network IP, so a IP address, which is a computer address or phone address on your network that you can scan. I'm not sure why you would do that, but you could do it to see if there's any ports that are open. You can even do this to your router, your modem, or whatever. For now, I'm just going to do my modem, my router, which is 192.168.1.1. I'm not sure what yours is, but to figure that out, what you can run is there's this thing called Net Discover, which basically stands for Network Discover. And you can see, okay, I need to be root for this. Just type in sudo And you can see it's going to find other network devices, so devices connected to the same network. And yours should be like, it should tell you what that is. So you can see here, this is my modem. It actually says there. And if I do Nmap, okay, you know the popular command ping. So you send a ping request to see if it's up and running. Nmap basically does this request where it sends out a request to see if that service or if that port is open, then bring back that result. So this is what Nmap is doing. So if I do Nmap and then supply the address, it's going to go out and perform the scan to see if there's any services or open ports, is what it's called, to try and test or probe it further. So the reason why a hacker would do this is to understand how a system works so they can find a loophole and potentially gain access to a vulnerable piece of software in that service. So it's kind of like that. And Nmap is very helpful in finding these open ports and services, because you can see here right away, it just displayed that information. So what are we looking at? So we've got the port, we've got the state of the port. So if it's opened, if the port's closed or filtered, you can see here, and also the service, like what that port is. So we got port 22 on my network is SSH. So we've got a SSH machine or a session open. We've got port 53, so there's a HTTPS website running. That's why we've got two ports here which are related with HTTPS, which means there's a website running and it's open, which is the modem website, which you actually log in to see devices on your network. And also you've got these other ports here. I mean, we've got this port here, which is unknown, which I don't know what that is. We could take a look at that a little bit further. But this is not really necessarily anything serious, but it's pretty cool to play around with a tool like Nmap. I know how basic it sounds, but it's really cool because you could do certain things with it. There's certain like commands and parameters that you can add to the like Nmap tool to perform a in-depth scan. These are just basic defaults, but if you type in nmap-h, what this will do is you can actually see all these parameters that you can actually run with the tool Nmap that performs a certain outcome, which is also very nice. But this is something we can take a look at in another popular tool that I usually use, or ethical hackers would use, strictly like website penetration testers, is a tool called WhatWeb. Now, this isn't like a dangerous tool or anything. All this does, it just visits a website and then grabs information about the website in the headers. Essentially, what that would include is like what the website's made in. If I do my website, if I do declan.com, it's going to go ahead and it's going to banner grab or grab that information from my website. Like, what is the website running on? What is it using? Where is it being hosted? All that information. So you can see here, this is my thing. By the way, this is, if you see this here, like this IP, this isn't my IP. This is actually where my website is hosted. So if someone does something silly to this IP address, you will be in trouble. Not by me, by the company of Versal. It's just to give you another perspective on what you can do with WhatWeb. WhatWeb isn't supposed to identify an IP address. It's just to form that request to see what the website's using. So you can see here, I'm using Versal to host my website. Now, you can also, if you were like a malicious actor, you could just go on Google, search up a vulnerable piece of software or something related to Versal, which I doubt anyways. That's kind of what you would do, is identify that information and then go ahead and do your research to find if there's any vulnerable pieces of versions of that software with the information that you have, to then potentially run against the target or run against something's vulnerable. It's just something to keep in mind of. WhatWeb basically stands for what web technologies, like what website, what is the website running, and what are we taking a look at. So that's why it's called WhatWeb, and it's very nice. It's very nice. So another common tool that hackers would use, or ethical hackers would use, is a tool called Metasploit. This is a framework that has a lot of like modules and exploitation scripts, just a lot of like code, pre-written code for vulnerable versions of software programs, like I was just speaking about before. So in order to run this framework, we can type in MSF console, which is actually the Metasploit Framework console, which we can actually run in our terminal to use Metasploit. So Metasploit just basically, it's just a tool that has, as you can see here, 2,529 exploits. And you're probably thinking, wow, what could you do with that? There's a lot of stuff here that you can take a look at, but it's actually just a huge library. So think of it like this. It's like a huge library of like payloads, exploits, scanners to test certain versions of systems. That's kind of what this is. So let's say I had like an old version of like SSH or something. You can type in search SSH, like login or whatever, and you can see right away, as I typed in search, this is built into the framework. If I type that again, you can see here, I can use different modules, exploitation modules, or even auxiliary modules, which basically means testing. It's not actually attacking it in any way. So auxiliary modules just tests it. So I can actually use these modules, which is just pre-written code, to run against the target to perform something specific like login or testing the login, or maybe like testing something like this. Look, auxiliary scanner, SSH login. So can we try to log into the version of SSH? SSH is just like another network tool that allows you to log in and share files and have remote access to something, right? Let's say I had like an old version of Apache 2, or sorry, not Apache 2, just Apache. So Apache Tomcat. Like, that's a good one. So like if I search Apache Tomcat, we can see here everything to do with Apache Tomcat. So over the years, Metasploit is, always being developed. I mean, look at this one here, 2025. This is very recent, and it's an excellent exploitation module against Tomcat. So this is actually quite recent, but it's always being added on. It's always been updated because it's a very handy framework to just get that testing going, to just quickly gain access, or to enumerate further as a penetration tester to see if the system is, flawed or flawless, and we proceed with something else, right? So Metasploit Framework is very handy in that sense. It's really great to test systems and test even networks and old versions of software, because you might just gain access, or even better, you might have shell access, and then you could do what we spoke about in the beginning, privilege escalation, which is a major vulnerability in a system. So Metasploit is great. I use it all the time when I do hack the box retired machines. It's really good to get your hands on this framework and get good with it. It's amazing. I think the last thing that I want to talk about is a thing called Searchsploit. So Metasploit Framework has this connected to what's called a Searchsploit website. So there's a website that you can actually go to. So if I open up my Firefox browser here, there's actually a website, and it should be bookmarked here. Okay, it's actually not, but it's called Searchsploit. So, or it's also called ExploitDB. So if I go to exploitdb.com, it's just like a manual. It's just like a website where you can see the latest exploits, or people who uploaded exploits to test a system, right? Or a website, or a vulnerability on a service, right? But you don't have to go to the website. You can actually just type in Searchsploit on your terminal. For example, let's do what we did with Metasploit. So if I do Searchsploit, let's search for an exploit related to Tomcat, right? Right away, it does the same thing. Right, so if something's not already in Metasploit, you can just use Searchsploit to find that version of software. So let's say it had a particular version here that you could, test or run. The exploit would be in one of these files. Now, these are text files, but you would get something like this. So denial of service, obviously don't suggest that, don't want to do that. But there's like Python files, Ruby files here. So you got .py, .ruby. You've got Perl scripts here as well. Let's try and do something like PHP upload vulnerability or something like that. So we can do arbitrary. So for this version of software here called Zomplug 3.8, we could do arbitrary file upload. So this is just a service that we can perform upload our files to. We've got the exploit here. So this is just a PHP reverse shell, which means we can gain access to the server. So you can see here, there's a lot of exploits that we could use, even with WordPress and all types of software, right? So you've got this script here. So this ID number here is to do with Python. So we could run this Python script to perform this file upload vulnerability, right? So to actually find or locate or even get this script, to even use it, you can actually just copy this location of the script here. So go ahead and copy that. So we can just go ahead and copy this path name, not like the Python file, but what we can do is just do the exact same thing again, and it will still do that. But you can see here, the path is here. So we can just go ahead and just type in copy the path name, and then we could just rename it to exploit.py. At the end of the file name, we just can call it exploit.py related to that service. And now if I type in ls, you can actually see here the exploits on my desktop. You can see there's the exploit. But we can actually go ahead and actually read this exploit by, let's just type in nano. So nano is where you can actually see and edit files on your terminal. So type in exploit.py, and we can actually read everything to do with this exploit and this vulnerability. So this is all the code that makes it work so that we could gain access to the server. So it's just like a nice helpful way to navigate and just quickly get that exploit running just to test the system so that we can provide further information. I forgot to mention one more thing, is that this operating system is running what's called Debian Linux, which is highly customizable, and this Linux environment is called XFCE, which is a lightweight version for Kali Linux as a Linux distro anyways. Another handy thing that you can do is when you open up the terminal, and let's say you want to see what your IP address is on your Linux machine, you can type in ifconfig, and essentially this command on Linux will give you the information needed to understand what is your IP address for your system. So if I come up here, you can see I have Ethernet 0, and you can see this address here is my IP address for my local computer on my network. So this is just only LAN, local area network IP address. So this is just the network, your computer IP on your main network. So yours might say WLAN or WLAN 0. Mine says ETH0, and then this would be your IP address for your machine. So let's learn a little bit of like system commands here, because you're going to be doing this when you do hack the box and all that type of stuff. So I'm just going to go through some basic commands that you can take note of. We can type in unname-a, and essentially this will just pull information already from your system, from the Kali Linux machine, about what the operating system is running. So if you did this on a different Linux distribution, it will pull something else, but it's just good to bring in that information, because let's say I had access to a machine, a Linux machine specifically, and I did unname-a, it will tell me what that is, so I could just further identify more system information. Another good thing is to run a command called top. This basically just shows real-time system processes. So think like Task Manager on Windows. This is like that, but for Linux. And we can see the PID, the process ID of the current program that is open. So we've got basically the root user running in the background here. So we've got the user Kali, and then we've got the user root on this session. You can also see like what is this command associated with. So this is the terminal. Our default user Kali Linux user is using that. So you can just press Control-C to go out of it. Let's actually become a root user. So the way that you do that is by typing sudo su, just like that. And by the way, sudo stands for super user do. So that's why you type in sudo when you want to run a command that needs root access, because it prevents you from running root programs that is not installed on your system or not. So when you run sudo, it's running it with root privileges. So super user, which is root, and then do. So that's what sudo stands for, super user do. And then, so what we're saying here is we're saying super user do become super user. Sounds a little bit weird, but that's how it is. It's just sudo su, you just become root, and then you're good to go. And you can see we are the root user. So if we actually delete files and upload files, etc., we delete files, move files, copy files around the system. Let's actually check another one. So let's see if this is installed. So this is not installed. We can actually go ahead and install it. So if you type that and just press Y, it's going to go ahead and install this command. If it's installed by default, that's great. You can just run it. But essentially htop is basically what we did before with top. Htop is a improved process monitor. Right, so it's exactly like top, where we can see real-time processes, but htop gives you like more of a visualized, just with colors essentially. Like it just makes it more readable instead of just looking at white text. The really cool thing about it is that you can sort through it and just copy it and copy note of it, which is very nice. Let's type in free-m. Free-m is basically memory that's being used right now. It's just memory usage, really. That's all that is. There's nothing too much to it. You can type in uptime. So there's another Linux command. If you type in uptime, you can just see which user has been running for a certain period of time. Okay, great. So we learned a little bit of some system commands on Linux. Let's take a look at more networking commands. So I showed you ifconfig. So that's ifconfig. We can also do IPA, which is basically what I showed you before. We can identify our host address on a network. So you can see that this is our address. And if you scroll up here, there's more information, but that is another great way to kind of type less instead of doing that. So you just type in IPA, which is great. Ifconfig, same thing. Ping, so ping is just a tool, a built-in command line utility tool to test a address. So if I was to test my router on my network, the router, the modem that gives me access to the internet, if I just ping it, it just sends requests to the router, and then it brings back the request saying it is up and running. So if, let's say that a server was down or a website IP address was down and you try to ping it and then it wasn't pinging, right? It sent requests, but it wasn't receiving anything. That's why it says unreachable. Then that means it's down. Ping is a great utility tool to identify if a network is stable or not. Another great Linux command is netstat, which basically just shows open information, like open ports on your system as well. But to specifically filter this out, we can type in netstat. So go ahead and type in netstat and type in TULN, like this. So this can actually just show you like which ports are specifically open. So we've got UDP ports here, but there's not actually anything running right now as active connection. So there's nothing on here. Another great one is called traceroute. So if you don't know what traceroute is, so traceroute just identifies that specific route to that host. So it just bounces, it hops to that host until it gets to the first address, right? So let's say we do traceroute declan.com, right? It goes from our address, but it actually does a hop to go back to the original address. It just shows each hop. So it like hops. It's like, okay, checking this route, checking this route, checking this route, till we get to the main address that may leak info about it, like ISP, hosting provider, the location of the data center, or network segmentation or something like that. It's just finding and discovering devices, right? Or misconfigurations. It's another thing that you could use traceroute to show each hop or router or gateway between the attacker or the investigator and the target. So this will basically reveal how data travels across the internet or local networks, which helps understand the structure of the target network and potential access points. So that's what you would use traceroute for. But this isn't anything malicious. It's just bunny hopping. It's just hopping on different network requests. So it's just to investigate more information about like where's the main address located. Like uncovering those details. That's all that is. So we took a look at networking commands. Now let's focus on some process and service management commands on Linux. So like I showed you before about showing, processes, we could do ps aux, which will list the current processes running on the system. So we don't actually have to look at that specifically. But if I was to like open up Firefox, so let me just open up Firefox. So Firefox is running. If I go back and type in ps aux, you can actually come up here and actually see Firefox running. So you can actually see the specific session of Firefox that's running on the system. So if I come down here, there should be, so these were the commands that I was running prior, but there needs to be, okay, here we go. So you can see there I'm running Firefox, and you can actually see the associated browser. So this is the one here. So this is the PID. So the PID is this, and we can actually go ahead and destroy this session by typing in the Linux command called kill. So this will just go ahead and just destroy that session by just closing that PID. So if I copy that PID and I paste it in, you can see there the browser's gone. So if I do that again, if I open up the browser, and then if I find that, it would still be here. So you can see if I come to the latest, this is the processor that has opened for that particular browser. And if I go here, I can actually destroy that process by typing in kill, and then the process ID that spawned. And there we go. It closed the browser completely. It destroyed the session so that the browser just closed. Right, so it's not actually running in the background. nor is it running at all. It just destroyed the process, the session, and just closing the browser completely. So to start services on Linux, this is another thing I want to talk about, is, let's say you want to run a web server. Let's say, just for educational reasons, you want to set up like a test page, like a phishing page, right? Or you want to run your own web server off your Linux machine on your local area network. You've actually got Apache 2 installed, which is basically what you would host your servers on, right? Sorry, your files on to host your server. So you can type in service Apache 2, which is the service, and then you can type in start. So if you type in service Apache 2 start, so the command service allows you to run certain services on your system. So you can run other services. It doesn't just have to be Apache. Whatever's installed that you can run the command service, you can just type in start, and then it will go ahead and start that particular service. So now Apache 2 is running. And like I said before, if we do IPA and we actually go to our network address, our IP address of our machine, and go to that local port number of the web address that's running. So Apache 2 will spawn a web server, and you can see here, this is on our machine. This is a website running on our machine. This is just the default page. But if you upload like your own code, like HTML, CSS, into this directory, so you can type in cd/var/www/html. And if you go into this directory, you can see here, that's actually what's being hosted in front of us right now. So if I actually delete this, so let's use our Linux commands. So let's copy the whole thing, including this file and this file. And if I type in remove, we don't have to do sudo because we already root. If I do remove fully, and just paste in the files I want to delete, enter, we can see here, if I refresh, this whole page will disappear. There we go. So the HTML files were deleted, and now there's nothing on the web page. But we can make our own HTML file. So if we type in touch, so this is going to go ahead and create a file. So touch, let's call it index.html. And if we press enter, we type in ls, it's there, but there's nothing on the web page, of course, because we actually need to write the code for the web page. So let's use some of our Linux skills. So let's type in nano index.html to go into that file and edit it. Now we can actually edit the file. You can edit whatever you want in this file and it will show up on the website. But if you don't know HTML, I won't go too much into it, but let's just type in a header. So let's write some code, some basic HTML code. So this is what you call a header tag. So it's just a header of a website. So if we type in header test, or you could just say heading 1, and we close that, just like that. That's a heading. You can just call it heading if you want, or whatever you want, test or my website, my cool website. And then you press Control X on Windows or Command X on Mac if you're on Mac, or like VMware Fusion, and then you just press Y to save and then press enter. There we go. Now it's saved the file. Now if we go back and refresh, there we go. It's a title. It's the heading of the website. So there we go. So our website's running because we used the command service to run the Apache server. We went into the directory, added our own file. So you can see how this can be beneficial, which is very cool. So let's go cd, just go back to the main directory. We're done with that. And let's just type in service Apache 2 stop. So if you go back, if you do that whole thing again and you go back, copy your IP address, paste it in the browser on port 80, you go to it, the website's not going to be running because we closed the session by running service Apache 2 stop. So we stop this service. So that's another great utility tool built into Linux for us to run specific services. If you want to see like service status, so you can type in systemctl. So systemctl will actually, analyze or actually list what services are running. So you can type in like, let's say status for Apache 2, right? We can see here it's disabled, so it's not running, right? It says inactive, so it's not active currently. But if we go back and type in service Apache 2 start, right? And then systemctl status, to see the status, the current status of Apache 2, we can see that it's currently active. So now it's running. So systemctl is a great way to see what services are running on the system. So you can type in system status for SSH. If you're running SSH, I'm not running SSH, but you can see there, if it was running, it will say it's running. So you can actually pick what service. So for Apache or SSH or something else like Telnet or FTP, Okay, I don't actually have FTP, but whatever it can be, right? And what I like about systemctl is what I like about systemctl is that you can actually enable and disable these services at boot time. So let's say you boot up Kali Linux and it's just automatically running, right? Or you just want to boot up Kali Linux and you don't want to have anything running. You don't want to have this service running at all. You can actually enable that. So you can type in systemctl enable and then the service name. So it could be SSH, like I said, Telnet, or even Apache 2. So when you boot up Kali Linux, Apache 2 is already running. So if you do that, it will set it to that. So when I restart Linux and I boot it up again, Apache 2 will be running. But we don't want to do that because we don't want anyone else browsing on our cool website, right? So let's just disable that. So we can type in disable and it will just disable that functionality. So when we boot up Linux, Kali Linux, or you can even do this on Ubuntu Linux, it will disable that service from running once you boot it up. Right, so we took a look at process and service management. Now let's look at package management. So what I showed you in the beginning was we updated our operating system. We used the apt package manager to upgrade certain kernel files, etc. We just updated the whole operating system for Kali Linux to make sure all the tools, all the software that we'll use as a penetration tester is up to date and it is functional. But let's actually take a look at package management, like Linux commands for package management a little bit further. So I showed you, now we are in root. We don't actually have to type root anymore, but we can say, apt update, make sure it's updated. That's great. We could do that. It's going to go to the Linux mirror repository and actually download all packages to make sure and ensure it's updated. The next one is upgrade. So we've upgraded that. We don't need to do that again. And by the way, I don't think it will go through it. Yeah, there we go. You can see that it's already upgraded the whole thing. So we automatically installed and no longer required to update it. Okay, that's great. If you want to install a specific package, you can type in apt install and then like a package name. Like we saw before, you can actually install something specific. So you can type in apt install, let's say Python 3, right? It's already installed, but if you don't have Python 3, you can actually select what package you want to install on this repository, the Kali Linux repository, and it will go ahead and download that package for you. And by the way, everything's already pre-configured with Kali Linux, so it's absolutely brilliant to have this operating system for you because you can just get straight into it and learn. If you want to remove a package, which I don't suggest unless it's like malicious or something like that, or you just don't want it, you can just type in apt remove and then the file name. So obviously not Python 3. We don't want to remove Python 3. We need that to run certain scripts. But you can type in apt remove and then the file name, but we don't need to do that. In order to see what packages we've installed, we can actually type in apt list and then installed like this to see what packages are installed on our operating system for Kali Linux. So what packages have we installed already when we upgraded the system? Like what are the packages that we have just installed? So there's a lot of lines here to go through, but we can see here, these are some of the basics. So we got Apache 2, we upgraded that. That's brilliant. We've got the add user command as well, ecrackng, which is a tool for cracking Wi-Fi, wireless networks, 7-zip for zipping files. So there's a lot of packages here that have been updated or even downloaded, installed already, pre-configured on Kali Linux. Let's explore this a little bit further. Let's say that you want to review all the commands we've typed out already. So you can actually type in history. This is a command that will allow us to see what commands we've typed out previously. And you can see how helpful this can be to navigate through a system, to navigate through our own machine on Kali Linux, or to even just remember commands now and then. What I find really interesting about Kali Linux, or just Linux in general, is that you can actually search for a specific file on Linux, especially if it's like deep in the system, like in your files, etc., and you can't find it. So let's say let me go ahead and actually create a file. Let's just create a random file in a folder really quickly. Let's do it in our opt folder. So this is just an optional directory folder. So let's say I created a file called test.txt, right? And I go out completely. I'm not even associated with that user, and I'm the regular user as well. That doesn't really matter. But we can actually type in find / the name of that file. So find is a command in Linux. / is searching through the entire operating system or just the entire system for a file name. So we say find / name for that file, and we can find test.txt. And Just by doing this, it's going to say permission denied. So we don't actually have permissions to do that, but we can go back and type in sudo find file.txt, right? It's also going to say permission denied. But we can also see here, there's a lot of other files called test.txt, which I find really interesting. But you can actually see down here, so with it searching throughout the whole entire operating system for other files called test.txt, you can actually see here, this is actually where we added our own file in the optional directory. So we can see /opt, that's where we were, /text.test.txt. So you can see how the so you can see how helpful the find utility command in Linux can be helpful for searching through the entire system to find a specific file. It could be a word list or a directory or whatever it is. So it's absolutely brilliant. So like when you do hack the box and you gain access, you can try and find the user flag by typing in find if you have privileged access, which is great. And that's the end of the video. So we covered a lot of Linux commands in this video, and I hope you learn a lot. If you got any questions, just reach out to me or just do some research online. Go on Google, search up a few things if you don't understand it. Search up Linux commands on Google or on YouTube, and you can also find and watch other videos related to Linux. Linux is a really cool operating system. There's a lot of Linux distributions out there. It's not just Kali Linux. You've got Ubuntu, Arch Linux, Kubuntu, even lightweight versions of like other Linux distros, which is really good. Kali Linux is strictly made for penetration testing. It's made for penetration testers to do all their tasks, to be a hacker, an ethical hacker, to be a penetration tester, which I find really cool, right? And a lot of people use it, especially me. I use it a lot to perform security tests on my website. I use it because it has all the stuff and all the tools pre-configured for me to run and test my software or even do like cool videos like this. Yeah, so it's good. I thank you for watching this video. I've tried to cover a lot of Linux commands as possible. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next.